If you have been enjoying Edinburgh Business Stories and you want to keep up to date with some of the new episodes we've got coming out every other week, then why not subscribe? The stories, the guests we have are absolutely incredible and we wouldn't want you to miss out.
Jonathan, great to have you on the podcast.
Thanks very much for having me, gentlemen.
So just give us a snapshot, who you are, what your business is.
Yeah, so I'm Jonathan Ward. My company's called Spring Solutions. We are 7 years old this year. Kind of operating in between that small and medium-sized enterprise. Probably, compared to where we started, we're medium, but I think we're probably battling to try and get our way up to medium at the moment. So we're based just on the outskirts of Edinburgh in West Lothian. What we do is we supply fasteners, so nuts, bolts, washers, that kind of thing, chemicals and consumables. So chemicals being stuff that would be used in finished products and consumables being things that you would use while building those products. So your gloves, your hairnets, and your chemicals would be things like paint, soils, lubricants, sealants, that type of thing. So we supply those primarily to manufacturing companies and primarily in the critical industries. So when we say critical industries, we're talking about aerospace, defence, maritime, subsea, oil and gas. And the reason we say manufacturing companies as well is when you say a supplier of fasteners and chemicals and consumables, you might get this image of someone like Screwfix that you just nip into to pick up a handful of screws to fix a bit of drywall in your house or something like that. I'm not handy. I don't know if you fix a drywall with screws, to be honest, but that's what came to my head, so we'll stick with it. But whereas we are, what we're supplying is pretty high end for some pretty critical applications. But the reason we say manufacturing companies in particular is if you think of, the example we always use because there's always electronics around us, but if you think of someone who's manufacturing the iPhone, for example, the iPhone will be made up of 100 different components. 30 or 40 of those components will be a fastener, a chemical, or a consumable. And then the other 60 will be the screen, the speaker, the casing for it and whatever else. Now, what we say is that those 30 or 40 different fasteners, chemicals or consumables, they will all come with their own complexities, particularly when you're dealing with critical applications. So they'll all have their own materials, they'll all have their own manufacturing specifics, they'll have shelf lives, they'll have obsolescence issues, all this kind of thing that you don't really think about when you think of just a basic fastener or chemical or consumable. And so what we say is, for the company that's manufacturing the iPhone, they might have an output of 1,000 iPhones this year. Rather than them going and trying to buy those 30 or 40 different commodities separately from maybe 20 or 30 different suppliers at 20 or 30 different prices and lead times and whatever else, and filling themselves up with loads of stock that they're not sure if they're going to use, and some of it arrives on the Monday, then some doesn't arrive till the Tuesday, and then you've got the 16-week lead time item. We say, right, you focus on what you're good at and let us focus on what we're good at, which is fasteners, chemicals and consumables. So wrap that up into a nice package for us, 30 or 40 items, and we will design you a solution that means that for your skilled engineering staff who are actually producing these parts, we will deliver the parts directly to them as they need to use it. So just in time is something you've mentioned before, but that's where the model almost comes from. We're taking it that one step further and, making it kitted or whatever the solution might be for that customer, and making sure that those skilled engineers don't have to leave their desk to build the products, and that therefore increases the efficiencies for your engineering team, but also significantly reduces touch time for other areas of your business. So if you think back to the model we were speaking about just before, where they buy those 30 or 40 themselves, they're having to go out to get the price in, they're having to place the order, they're having to manage the supplier, they're having to chase them when they're late, then they're having to inspect the parts at the back door, they're having to store them, they're having to get them somehow to the point of use, which is usually by one of the warehousing team, and then finally they're getting to build those products. Basically, the shortened version of our model is give us a long-term purchase order and we will handle the rest.
Great.
Does that make sense?
It's well worth understanding that, because I know for us, when we were, I was looking at your website and I'm like, I think I understand what you do, but no, it's definitely good to get the context of that kind of going into it.
Well, just give us an example of the kind of end product that your parts help contribute to build.
All right, okay. Yeah, so we've got 3 or 4 key projects at the moment that we're working on, and some of them are into aircraft. Some of them are, one of our biggest customers at the moment is building tanks. So building the Boxer for the British Army, bringing manufacturing back to the UK, that as well, which is very impressive. And then you've got some sort of subsets of that as well. So you have what we call OEMs, other equipment manufacturers, who are manufacturing gearboxes, headsets, laser equipment. So that's the type of things that our products are going into.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's quite a niche. So how did you end up here? Go back to the beginning of your business journey. What was school like?
Aye, absolutely. So I told this story recently on a friend of yours, Jimmy Taylor's podcast. And I said at the time that I probably didn't have an idea of what I wanted to do with myself. The more that was probably the first time I ever actually reflected on the story and told it. And the more I think about it, the more I think it probably was a bit clearer than that. So my dad had a similar business to what I have now. This would almost be the sort of third generation of it, really, where he had a business when we were younger that sold just the fastener element. And I remember sort of growing up, we didn't really have an awful lot of money and options, as I would say, the money gives you, when we were really young. And then through my dad's cycle of having started this business and just watching my dad go out every day, and my dad was my hero, but going out in his suit and tie every day, and some days he'd be coming home celebrating, some days maybe it wasn't quite as nice. But after, pretty quickly, to be honest, in terms of the evolution of, going from not having very much to having quite a lot, he ended up doing really, really well for himself, and that gave us choices and options, and it just made life a lot easier. It's world's smallest violin stuff. I'm not saying we were really, but just like we didn't have an awful lot of options, and we stayed in some rougher council estates and stuff like that. To then we had a lot more options come when we were like maybe primary 6, 7, going on to high school. We stayed in nicer houses. We were able to get the kind of nicer shoes. My dad was driving a nice car, and that stuff to a wee boy is just golden. And so I loved that. And probably because of that, the subjects I excelled in school were business, accounting and finance, wee bit of English. But I hadn't really applied myself until the subjects became available. I reflecting on school, I think I could have done better than I did, to be honest. But anyway, whether consciously or subconsciously, I started to do well in business and finance and accounting and finance, business management and accounting and finance. And I left school and went away and worked in a bank for a wee while. And I would say, Scots aren't very good at building themselves up, but I would say I'd done really, really well when I was working in the bank. I was in mortgages completions, and I was able to, the directors weren't able to do this, but I was able to tell exactly how much we'd completed on a certain day, then forecast how much we would do in the week. And it ended up like you'd get some quite senior staff coming and looking at some of these reports I was running. And it was really quite interesting. I really enjoyed it, but it was quite monotonous as well. And what I didn't see was what my route was to go any further within there. So I decided that I was going to step out of employment. I was only 16 at the time, by the way. I left school at the end of 5th year, but I was an early starter at school. So I was 16 at the time, and I decided, I don't want to be doing this sort of monotonous, repetitive stuff for a long time. So I went away to study again, and obviously started to get a bit older there as well. So you're starting to introduce things like drinking and going out at the weekends and whatever else. And I remember the first day of college, the lecturer saying, like, this isn't school, I'm not going to force you to be here. And may as well just stop speaking there, to be honest. I was like, right, okay, perfect, shoot it in. So I would say for a wee while, I kind of lost my discipline. I saw college as an opportunity to have a bit of a break from school and straight into working. Lost my discipline a wee bit. And rather than at the end of my year at college going into study or going to do a degree as I had originally intended to do, I just said, there was a mixture of, I had kind of fell in love with the money for working at the bank, and then I just lost that. So I went from school to being quite well off, going into quite a decent job, well off from my age, doing nice, being able to get myself nice things, to then going back to college and going back to the sort of student lifestyle. And then I said, I'm not going to go to university. I'll go and work for a year. I'll have my fun, and then I'll see what happens after that. And to be honest, I came out of college and I didn't really apply myself in finding a job. I was taking the mick, to be honest. I was still staying with my dad and his wife. And just, I think I was saying I was going to interviews and going to the pub and stuff like that. And just, I'm not proud of it, but on reflection, it's just what a 17-year-old boy does. It's what I did anyway. So it kind of culminated, and after maybe 2 or 3 months, my dad got a bit annoyed with it, and he says, right, you're clearly not trying. Like, he wasn't daft. He knew I was taking the mic. He says, you're clearly not trying. So if you don't get a job within the next 4 weeks, you're coming to work for me. Now, as I mentioned before, he had a company that done a similar thing to what Spring Solutions do now, albeit they only done that fasteners commodity. And so I thought, I'll call his bluff here. It's just, that's where my mind was at the time. I didn't necessarily think I'm not going to do that, or he won't do that. Just where my mindset was at the time. I wasn't looking for a job properly. So ended up working for my dad for 20 quid a week. And as you do when you're a teenager, I thought, I'll show him, I'll just go in and sleep up the racks and I'll just take the mick. I used to have wee annoying games I played and tricks I played in the staff and all that kind of stuff. And it was so immature. And a couple of the guys actually work with Spring Solutions now. And I just don't think they can believe I'm the same person I was back then. But anyway, hopefully we'll get to the better part soon. But so I after a few weeks, I started to realize this is quite immature. And if I'm getting up in the morning and working 9 till 5 every week, and I'm here, I might as well A, start putting it in a wee bit, and B, start actually using that time to apply for another job. So I done that, started to put it in a wee bit, and then applied for a job and got a job in a call centre doing sales. And massive big up to call centre selling. I think if you want to go to, my own opinion, but I think if you want to go to the top in sales, you have to experience that rejection that you get all day. That it's a horrible environment, but it's a great environment as well. I think there's so much to be said about going into a call centre and just battering the phones on outbound calling all day long. When I got that job, and there's probably a few things happened there. I got my discipline back, started to really enjoy the sales element of it, but I also started to realise that workplace culture in your average place wasn't great. It was sign off when you go to the toilet, literally recording the amount of times you're spending in the toilet, and you're only getting a certain amount of breaks. And we were doing 13.5-hour shifts over a Friday and a Saturday as well. And the only thing that kind of made it better was I semi-enjoyed the sales element of it, and then some decent people around me. So I probably reflected on that and thought, my dad's got quite a good thing going back there. Not consciously again, but I've realised it. So I started looking for something else and looking for my next step into sales. This was where I started to realise I wanted to do sales. And my old man came to us and says, we've got a project that we need done for the next 6 weeks. They just had an audit off of, funnily enough, our biggest customer now. And they basically hammered them on one element of it and said, we want this fixed within 6 weeks. And so my old man brought me in to come in and fix this element of the project. It was quite an administrative and heavy task, but I went back in, and without even realising it, I was a completely different person from what I had been even 4 months prior, when he was giving me 20 quid a week and I was going in and taking the mic and whatever else. And after about 2 weeks of being there, his business partner, I can't remember if he said to me directly or says to my dad, but basically said, by the way, we should get Johnny in working here. So they made me an offer, and rather than going to this other job that I was supposed to go to, I went into my dad's company, my dad and his business partner's company, and I went into a sales role. And I just really enjoyed it. I had been in a place where the culture wasn't great again, and I really enjoyed this sort of family feel, really enjoyed the culture, solving problems for customers, and I just really started to find myself in that role.
Great. And so what was the step then from going from, in your dad's business to the point where you're like, I'm going to do my own thing?
Yeah. So I worked in there for, I would say when I went back in there, I must have been 18, right? And I worked in there for 4 or 5 years, and really bumped myself up to, one thing my dad always taught us about going into work was make yourself indispensable. Just make it to the point that if you tell your boss you're going to leave, he can't live without you. So I had that in my mind, and I just went in, and every bit of work I could take on, I was taking on, to the point that I had a forklift license, so that if my customer phoned and said, we need this part out the door today, and downstairs was run, I could literally load the order, buy the products or release the products, go and put them on the forklift into my own car or van, the van, and go and take the parts to the customer. So I was learning the business inside out, learning every different element of it. Used to spend a day or two a week downstairs at goods inspection, getting to know the parts, really got to know the business inside out. Then after about 4 or 5 years, I was managing most of the key accounts and playing a hand in most of what was going good in the business. It sounds arrogant. I was by no means propping this place up myself, surrounded by brilliant people as well. People I got to learn off as well were just incredible, been in the industry for a long time. But I got to the stage where I was about 23 or 24, and just kind of thought, I'd been doing the same things for a long time. I'd worked in this job for 5 years, was in a relationship for a long time, was going to the same pubs every weekend. It was great, but I thought, I'm going to mix this up a wee bit. And I went away travelling. So disappeared off to Australia for 6 months, and again in Australia. So I partied for about 3 months of that, which was great, and then had to knuckle down and find a job. And again in Australia, you have to go back to base if you've not got like an apprenticeship or a trade, or you're not a qualified nurse or one of these skill shortages. You're basically seen as almost a school leaver, but you've not even got rights to work there, so that someone can employ you for a year. So nobody's taking a big chance on you. So I went back into just a crazy call centre environment, like total Wolf of Wall Street type environment, where you're bashing the phones all day long, you get a decent lead or a decent sale and you're getting a beer at your desk, you're going up and ringing this bell. And then we had these like 4 leaders who had all at one stage been like high flying in London, like serious people, came from, like, had serious money at one time. And you felt like they were almost in Australia on the way back down, and then this was the thing that was going to lift them back up. So they were nuts. They were just bonkers. Like, I couldn't even repeat some of the stuff they would do day to day. But like, they would go up to the board and slap up $100 and like, right, next sale gets $100. Right, if we get over 50 grand the intake today, we're going to the pub tonight. And I just loved that culture. And it made, again, going back to what I was saying about the culture over here being pretty crap when they're recording toilet time and stuff, I began to realise what happens if you can make a good, even what was a pretty crappy job, to be honest, bashing the phones all day long. Because, I mean, my numbers were, I was breaking records for numbers of calls. You're making 150 calls a day. You make 3 sales. And that's no fun. But if you add all this other culture stuff in and round about it, you can actually make that a good place to work. And they did make it a good place to work. So this is beginning to build in my head subconsciously. So anyway, I was over there, really, really enjoyed that. But after 6 months, decided, right, it's time to go back. I've got that wee bit of madness out of me. I'm going to go back. I came back and my dad had sold the business. Now, to me, when I was in Australia, I didn't really land how massive that was, but obviously it's a really big deal. He got an amazing deal. Sold it to this huge chemical and consumable company, which is where that other element of the products that we sell comes in, worldwide. And basically the reason they had sold was Fastech, which was my dad's business, was just getting global opportunities, but they were just 16 or 17 guys based over in Lithgow, and they kept getting these big opportunities and having to say no, and they kind of felt this is as far as we could take it. So we got this offer, which was incredible, that basically says, we'll let you sort of continue to grow this business, you come and join the management team here, and almost sky's the limit. They got some shares in the company and whatever else, and it was just a perfect marriage to begin with. So I came back, worked in a few different companies for a wee while, and ended up working back for Haas, who had taken over Fastech. Went in there as a business development manager, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I got to start to know the chemical and consumable side. All of a sudden, all the things that were limiting us, taking over more of the industry, the shackles were off. We had this big group behind us. We were able to go and sell to more companies. I was able to sell more products to my existing customers. It was just really good. But after a wee while, Haas Group was then taken over by a massive company. Or there was a joint venture taken over by a big PE company, but they owned another hardware company, another fastener company in the aerospace industry. And they just didn't get Fastech's value. So like, things just started stripping off. It just started going. And again, a big cultural difference between a company who was all about creating a good environment, all about solving problems for customers, to where you're taken over by this company who's, a listed company. All they care about is bottom line. All they cared about was appeasing shareholders. It's the right way to go, of course, for that type of business model. But again, I just noticed overnight what the difference is if you've got a good culture of happy people doing a job, and you've got a culture of people that's driven by this stressful, need to meet with a budget or whatever it might be. So the wheels started coming off a wee bit, particularly for the Fastech side of the business. They were losing staff all the time. The first time there was any sign of a downturn in sales, people that you got close with down south were gone. They were shutting departments. I remember my old man came back from a meeting, a sort of senior board meeting with these guys, and somebody had actually volunteered to go and shut a place. Like, I'll go and pay all them. I was like, is this like grown-ups want to go and pay people off, like volunteering to go and shut places and tell people they've not got a job? And that, I remember that part of it sort of sticking with me. And do you know what? No offense to the people that had to do it. It's just, it's part of the life in there, and it's just, but I just thought this is not what was good about us. And then you had the customer side of it as well. So you've got all these people internally who are struggling. But I always remember whenever I wasn't particularly enjoying things internally, I always had my customers to go, and that was who I had to make happy and keep happy. But then we were finding like accounts would go and stop because there was 500 quid over their credit limit. I wasn't allowed to push stuff through the system anymore because I had to go to places in Mexico and Poland for sign off. Just the things that happen with big companies, right? And I'm probably saying this and people are going, that's the life, deal with it. And that's fair enough. But I did begin to realise that there was this journey of a very, very happy company where everybody was working for each other. It became very individualistic and very about the financial side of things. So after about 6 months, they moved us onto a different system. They were shutting all of the smaller hubs. Now bear in mind, we had 2 hubs up in Scotland, and everywhere else was beginning to shut, and you think, the writing's probably on the wall here. Now, we were extremely profitable, really, really good business, had brilliant contracts. So I thought, they might keep us, or we might be last to go. But anyway, I wasn't going to give them the choice. I wasn't particularly happy where I was. So I got together with my dad, who had been working with another company within the industry at this stage. Spoke to his business partner, his two business partners, Mike and Rona. Spoke a wee bit to my boss at the time. Also started speaking to one of the guys who's working in the chemical side of the business, and said, I think, it's probably time to think about doing something else. And then I remember the sort of deciding time being, I went down to one of the sales meetings with this bigger company, and I was presenting my data, and everybody was starting to get really quite excited. And I thought what I was doing was just all right, but no, that's phenomenal. That's really, really good. And then I'd always been in awe of these sort of bigger people bringing in these bigger deals. But I began to realise that I think I could probably give it a wee bit of a go. By no means do I think I'm better than these people, but I think there's some things that this company's doing wrong that I could probably do right. So decided I was going to go start myself.
Amazing. Just listening to what you've described there, I mean, you're picking up lessons all the way throughout everything you've said. And for me, I'm just kind of capturing three things. One is a real appreciation of culture and what good culture can do. Uh-huh. The sales competence that you've developed through the various roles that you've had, starting with call centres, and then just that kind of getting to know a business inside out, the industry. So you can put those things together. So it feels almost obvious that when the opportunity presented itself, or you spotted it, now's the time to then start your own thing.
I think so.
That's how I've kind of heard it.
I think, and excuse me, it never seemed so obvious to me at the time. It was almost just like, before I left to go to Australia, people were always saying, you'll be running this place one day. I always just thought at the time, that's because it was my dad's company. And when I reflect now, it's because I did get to know it inside out, and I was pretty good at it without coming across as arrogant in any way. But it didn't really seem obvious until it did. And I got to that stage and I just thought, I can't do this anymore. So I probably didn't think I was good enough to go and start, but I just thought someone has to give. And if, there's an opportunity here.
All right. But you did. And then you got off to quite a good start quite quickly, didn't you?
Aye, we did. So
tell us about that.
So, and it was quite sobering. Went from this lovely, nice office on the Friday, and then on the Monday, my dad and I, who are not handy at all, were like sellotaping carpet down in this big warehouse, because we realised pretty quickly that if we want companies in our industry to take us seriously, it can't just be me trying to phone them from my bedroom or hiring a porta cabin. So we put a business plan to another company, Spring Distribution, who's my dad's wife's company, and we said we want to start as a division of this. We will become a solutions division that put the whole business model to them. And they were amazing with us. They gave us a place within their warehouse, gave us it rent free for the first wee while, allowed us to use some of their equipment, and were just so good. Just a lot of the problems that you face as a business starting out, particularly cash flow stuff with that, with those challenges around rent and whatever else, they helped us overcome. So that was great. But it was quite sobering in the first instance, going in and having to just create those wee offices, and there was forklifts buzzing all about you, there was black suit everywhere, and then going back to, I just used to have to sell the goods at the end, and then I was going back to having to have to sell them, inspect them, buy them, bring them in, whatever else. But it did. We in just our second year of trading, I had a bit of a moment where I thought, is this going to work? And then really started to double down on it. So within a week, I'd been in to see like 3 or 4 of the biggest companies in the industry. And within a month, one of them, this was in about 6 months, we got our accreditation. And then within about 2 months of that, we got invited to tender with this massive company we had worked with in the past, but it's one of the most lucrative contracts within the industry, within our sort of industry. So we got invited to go tender for it. And I don't know at the time if I felt we had any real chance of winning it, but of course you're never going to say no to that. So we went down, and it was a project to manage every one of their chemicals and consumables on site at this place. 1,600 members of staff, about 1,000 different products, 47 different production locations we'd have to set up solutions for. So it was just massive. At the time we were probably doing a couple of $100,000 a year. This is over £1 million contract. It's to be honest, it probably 10x our business overnight. But I remember at the time we went down, first visit, went really well, knew the business well, knew our way around the corridors and all that sort of stuff, which was really impressive to people who were new there. We knew the place better than they did. But went really well. And they says, right, go put together a proposal. So we put together a proposal. That part went really, really well. It says, we really like what you're doing. Went down to visit them again. They says, right, we need you to make a few changes. they weren't giving us the answers, but they were sort of coming up with problems, and we then went back and proposed solutions to it. And I remember getting a phone call just before we broke off for Christmas from the purchasing manager. And to be honest, this chap ended up taking a bit of a gamble that, you know, paid off for him, but had he not took it, you know, like I say, it 10x the business overnight, and he took a chance on us, and really, we've got him to thank for a lot of the progress we were able to make so quickly. But he made this call and he says, okay, cards on the table, it's yourselves and one other. Your pricing's okay, your proposal's brilliant, but the other company that you're up against is, you know, we figured out the name of them eventually, but they're one of the biggest companies, the biggest company in the industry, but one of the biggest companies in the world. You'd recognise their name, they're on the news quite regularly and stuff. And he says, so I love everything that you guys have done, and I love the creativity and the problem solving, and I know that I would get the solution I need from you guys, but we are one of the biggest names in the industry. You know, we can't put our whole business in the hands of this company that's, you know, relatively new. And essentially it was just me and my old man and a couple of others at the time. So we managed to sort of flip that around. We think our size is one of our strengths, and it still is. Most of our competitors are massive, billion-dollar companies, and they're not agile. They're not able to do the same things we do. They're not able to offer the same solutions we offer. They can't turn around things as quickly. They can't, you know, all the stuff I talked about when I worked with one of these bigger companies, they weren't able to do. We're able to do that. And we also, you'd done some due diligence. You know, the guy wasn't going to take any risks. We were financially steady enough. We were part of this bigger group. But anyway, we won this contract. But we won it, and it was always with the tinge of, we're a wee bit concerned about your size. So we were getting monitored for our size from day one. It was like, you know, this was a procurement manager, but the procurement director was on his case to then say, okay, have you checked this? And he was like double checking his work all the time, and which is fine. It's, you know, he's just doing his due diligence. But so we won that at the 1st of January. By the end of January, we have to come down on site with how we're proposing to, you know, kick it off and whatever else. And I always remember it because it was my birthday weekend. Stupidly, I'd had a drink on the Sunday, which was just so naive, just something I've learned. So, but so I was rough, and we get on the flight, and we go down. There's 3 of us, 2 of us over 6 foot, and then there's my dad, who's, you know, 5'11" or something like that. And we show up at the airport, and we're saying, right, how are we going to tell them that we are this big? How are we going to show them from day one we're this big company? We're this. And we get to the airport, to the car hire desk, and they hand us the keys, and it's keys to a Fiat, and I'm thinking, no way. And we get out the back, and it's this wee baby blue Fiat 500. And I'm like, day one, our opportunity to prove that we're this big company who can compete with the biggest in the industry, and the 3 of us show up getting out this wee clown car. So it was a good start, but I would say that didn't go great for a first visit.
But again, impressive that someone took the risk. Because what's the phrase? You know, you'll never get fired for hiring IBM. That's kind of
exactly that.
That's the same mentality. But that was the start of it all for you guys.
Yes, and
you've obviously demonstrated competence in the area, and it's grown since then.
Definitely. So, like I say, he took a risk, and you never get fired for hiring IBM. So just a great example of what went on there. But he took a risk. I think the 2 years after that, we won the Supplier of the Year at this global awards ceremony. Now, what usually happens with that is they fly you over to Boston, black tie event, invite 5 of you over, and you go up in front of every single one of their worldwide suppliers, which is like, you know, over 1,000 suppliers, and you get given this award. But of course, it was COVID times. So we're sat in the office, like watching this on a screen. So it was devastating. But we won there. So this, you know, the risk that he took really allowed us to, of course, it put a lot of pressure on us in the first instance, and we had to deliver very, very quickly. But with the financial income and with the backing that we had, and with even just being able to say we were a supplier to this company, it started to get us lots of recognition. And we were able to take these systems we knew were going to work, but really put some money into them, go and get some more staff, improve the premises a wee bit. We designed new offices, we moved into new offices. So it really just supercharged overnight.
Yeah, because practically to 10x overnight is not practical.
No.
So what, you know, like, it's like you win the contract, down the clown car, come back, sit down. Like what does like the first day where we're like, holy crap, we need to hire X number of people, we got billed up. You know, do you remember that sort of like crisis meeting?
Yeah.
What was it like?
And it's probably worth saying it, when I went into that crisis meeting, I had a head full of blonde hair. Within about a year, that was gone. So it was crazy, because of course the other challenge you've got, and we're going through this again just now, the other challenge you've got is you win a bit of business, they're not spending the money straight away. So you have to go and secure all the stock. We're going and securing like 6 to 9 months worth of stock to hold on the shelf to drip feed into them. So like the first month they maybe spend 15k, the next month it's maybe 30, but meanwhile we've got to go out and commit to all this stock up front and all that. So you can't really just go out and get another 5 members of staff. You can't, I mean you could if you wanted to leverage some debt, but we didn't ever really want to be in the position that we were either giving off shares in the business or putting the business at risk by taking on debt. So we kind of had to manage it ourselves. And what was really good about that is at the time there was 4 of us there. So it was myself, my dad was there, there was Jared Nisbet, who's business partner and purchasing director, and there was Mike Wilson, who's our logistics manager and director, logistics director. But we had all had experience of coming from those smaller businesses, and we had all sort of done that what I was talking about earlier, of knew how to do the business from end to end. So we literally were having to, buy the parts, inspect the parts, ship the parts. And we did go out and get others, it was like that for about 2 weeks, and then the spend starts to come in and you start to increase it and you start to put more staff in there. And of course, being part of Spring Distribution meant that we had other staff on site, so we were borrowing them where we could. So it was crazy and incredibly stressful, but it was good as well. There was the days where you turn around and you go, no, we have to try and appreciate this while we're here, because while it's crazy and while we're going to talk about this in years to come, it was a wee bit war dogsy.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know that, again, listening to your story and knowing a little bit about your business as well, this idea of solving problems is really key.
Absolutely.
And that's what I think you do really well. But the interesting thing is, you're if you compare solving a problem is about listening to what's the customer's problem. Your experience early days in sales was actually call centers, and you would probably characterize that as just talking.
Yes.
So along the way, you've learned that. But the best businesses are the ones that really identify the need, the problem, and then provide a solution. Now, your business it's very unsexy.
Absolutely.
Do you know?
Absolutely.
And again, we've talked about this. I'm not being disrespectful, right? But actually,
I'm not sat here thinking that's
very critical. Do you know? And can you just talk a little bit about that? You kind of touched on it at the start, but you're building tanks, but you're kind of supplying screws.
Yes.
Just give us your perspective on how important the screw is to the tank.
From a sort of our solution point of view.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you touched on there as well, as you were saying, almost it's about listening to the problem and then coming up with a solution.
Yeah.
So where we were able to do that is on the chemical side of the business. Now, we had been married with a chemical business and started to learn about these products, but what we could never believe, particularly when we went to this bigger company took us over, is how much stock is written off from a chemical point of view and how badly some of it's managed. So you imagine you've got the fastener side of things. It's quite easy. Now, you still need to listen, you still need to be very agile, and you still need to care. You still need to report on this, you still need to have the conversations, you still need to monitor it. But it's relatively easy, because if you tell me you're building 1,000 tanks this year, and therefore you're going to use 1 million screws, I can, in theory, go and buy those 1 million screws and drip feed them into you. So as long as I'm tearing that of regularly, supplying that and servicing that regularly, it's relatively easy to manage. But what we couldn't understand when we were married with this other company is the write-off of products is unbelievable. So if you want to take that same model I just talked about and take it over to chemicals and consumables, you can't do it where there's a shelf life. Yeah. So that same 1,000 tanks you're going to build, you need 500 Loctites or glues or sealants or adhesives or whatever it may be. You cannot go out and buy the 500 of those, because they will expire at some stage throughout that. But that also gives you the other problem in that what's going to happen first? Are you going to use the stock first, or is it going to expire first? Now, none of our customers are set up to manage this stuff. And it's not incredibly complex, but again, you need to be looking at it every single day in order to do it. So we were going into meetings and looking at customer bills that we're getting, 200k a month for scrap, literally as much as that. Some of the customers we're dealing with, that's at a higher level than customers we're dealing with, but some of the customers we were dealing with, 300-400k a month on scrap. There's a great quote from the Chemical Strategies Partnership that says that for every pound you spend purchasing chemicals, you will spend a further £1 to £2 in managing them. So we start to see that there's this massive problem for our customers, and not only, I guess the best way to phrase it is probably balancing the need to have that stock at all times, but also managing the risk of that stock then expiring and you having a massive bill. So we came up with a solution that we call ChemCare, which looks at your minute by minute usage and then starts to calculate what's going to happen first. Are you going to run out of stock or is it going to expire first? But importantly within that as well is the supply chain is really difficult to manage because it's all made by massive companies like Henkel and 3M. And whereas if I've got a fastener product and it's machined by an engineer that we're partnered with, the worst case in the world, we could have some of those produced within 2 or 3 days and we could have them back on the line. If you run out of a chemical product and it's got a 36-week lead time and you go crying to Henkel don't care. They're getting the business, whether it's through me, whether it's through direct from the customer. They genuinely don't really care about it. So you have to be thinking about a 36-week lead time 50 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what we've started to do there.
Yeah.
And then, but what we'll be able to then look at is also, there's different complexities that come with it. Say Henkel might tell you need to order 50 of those. But are you going to use the 50 or are you going to be scrapping 30 down the line? Mm-hmm. So again, if you go out on a purely price model, Henkel will be the cheapest. Whereas if you then say, but we can buy it through a distributor and rather buying a box of 50, we'll buy 20, it'll be 20% more expensive, but we're not writing 30 off 3 months later. So there's a lot of complexities to it. But we didn't think that anybody was managing this particularly well. Yeah. And one of the reasons they're not managing it particularly well, and I might be being a bit negative about it here, but is because it's good business for them. If I'm supplying, one of our customers with 50 grand of stock a month, it's not actually in my interest to not supply that 50 grand of stock a month because it's still 50 grand of turnover to us. Yeah. But it's not sustainable. It's not long term. Yeah. Whereas we will go in and we'll reduce that down. We reduce scrap on average by 78%, according to last year's stats. So if we reduce that down, I'm not going to tell you what 78% of 50 grand is, by the way. But what would be 37.5, 38, 39K?
Close enough.
So if we go in and then we reduce that by that 78%, okay, we're not getting the turnover from that, but the trust that you build with those customers. And so I genuinely believe that the level of work that we're doing for most of our customers goes back to something else I said earlier, which is make yourself indispensable. We become an indispensable part of this customer's supply chain, and that's where we want to be for the long term.
I think you've tied that up beautifully, actually, because that was the lesson of your dad, but
yes.
that's exactly, I think, what you create in the service that you provide.
Exactly.
A trusted, indispensable partner.
Well, that's what we're aiming for. And it would be easy to say that that's all for selfless reasons. We want to solve all those problems. And there is a huge element of that. But the other element is, well, we want to have a business that's sustainable, and just buying and selling and scrapping and just not providing that level of care, it's not sustainable. And we'd all be losing sleep at night thinking, when are they going to move on to the next person that will manage this badly for them?
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, you're going into quite a lot of detailed specifics around what you do, but it feels like there's so many lessons for every business. Just even in, manufacturing is just an industry that I don't know anything about. Like, it's just not a world I'm in. Some of the stuff that you've spoke about is just, I would never even think about how I could take that concept and apply it in my business. But there's so much stuff that you're talking about, although so industry specific. I'm thinking of like, what's the wastage in our businss? Like, and how, it's like, oh, well, we have stuff gets cancelled. And it's like, oh, well, this all still applies. It's still it's still solving problems. It's just the problems you're solving are specific because it's glue and chemicals. It's like, but every business has those problems. So it's really interesting.
Definitely. Were you going to say something there, Anne?
I was going to say, off camera, we were talking about, there's two things that I thought might be useful as well for other people to hear as well. So tell us about 5S and tell us about a shadow board.
All right, okay.
And why they're important.
So we don't sell this stuff, so you're going to have to bear with me if anybody that's watching that's an expert in this kind of stuff. But it's essentially lean principles that we will take into our environment to then try and reduce the wastage that we have as well. Yeah. So the example you spoke about was a shadow board. Yeah. Now, anybody that comes into our office our warehouse for the first time and sees a shadow board that isn't from our environment goes, oh, these guys are that's a bit anal, for want of a better phrase. Yeah. You've literally got what looks like a chalk outline for a tape gun that's died, but it's a shadow board that's got a tape gun written around it. It's got a knife written around it. It's got a ruler. It's got whatever other equipment we're using. Yeah. But the idea of that is sort of twofold. The first one being to remove the risk of FOD. So like the example I used is if foreign object debris. So if you, for example, if we've got a Stanley knife that we're using when we're building packaging and if you leave that in a box that goes to the customer, that's a worry. Who gets their hand on that Stanley knife, which is registered to one of the guys in our warehouse. But I mean, that's a basic risk at our level, but that's a bigger risk when you've got some of these companies that's manufacturing tanks and aircrafts, because if they leave a screwdriver and it gets involved with the gearbox, you're in all sorts of trouble when that plane takes off. So at the start and at the end of every shift, you have to make sure what was supposed to be on that shadow board is back there. Now, that's not the element we're talking about just now. What we're talking about is wastage. So the reason that is there is to eliminate the element of wasted time. So if you think about the example we spoke about earlier was like you can get a cleaner's shadow board. So if they've not got their stuff on their shadow board, if they have got it there, sorry, they can go, they know exactly where to go for every single operation of their cleaning. And the other idea being have that shadow board as close as possible to the manufacturing or the arena that you're working in at that time. But the other side of it is, if that's not there, how much time have you then spent going? I mean, the office is the worst place in the world. Who's got the hole punch? Who's got the, whatever it might be? But like we talked about, if we say it takes 15 minutes for someone to get into flow when they're working, and every one of these wee distractions is knocking that back, you're losing half an hour every time you can't find a hole punch. You're losing half an hour every time you can't. And that's kind of what we're doing at a product level, but then trying to bring that back into the arena that we're working in as well. So we're just rolling out 5S just now. I think we've had a really good start at it, and we've done it ourselves, but now we've got Scottish Manufacturing Advisory Service in to officially roll it out for us. And it does begin to get quite where you actually talk about rolling up your cables, and you kind of go through all your cupboards and you put everything into a middle area where it's like, if somebody doesn't pick it up from there in the next 3 weeks and we don't need it, and you just throw it out. And it's like anything you use daily goes into your drawers, anything you use weekly shouldn't be anywhere near your desk, anything that you're not touching, as you work physically should not be on your desk. And so I might have done that a disservice. The guys for SMS might be watching and going, what are you talking? It's not genuinely something we sell, but when you spoke about the wastage that goes on in a business, that's just how we start to try and bring that back into ours, because it's strange. You do start to get a wee bit frustrated by wastage when you're solving so much for the customer, and then you look at your own operation and you go, we just lost an hour and a half to try to find a ruler. That's an extreme example, but you know what I mean.
But so just for anyone listening here and me, 5S. What are the 5 S's?
Sort, set, shine, standardise, and sustain. So you sort it, then you set it into place, you shine it, you standardise it, so that's when it has to go, and then you sustain it. And sustain's the one everybody feels on, because everybody loves where you go and you put. I mean, I do it in the house. With all my clothes, my drawers have got running tops here, gym gear here, and it just means that at 5 a.m. when I'm trying not to wake the family to go out for the gym, I know exactly where I'm reaching. And again, you're just eliminating risk and waste. But the sustain bit is where everybody feels, because everybody loves the day where you tidy it up and it's this is great. Yeah. But then see when you go around and you go, that shouldn't be sat there actually, and that glass should be sat on the coaster, because you have to audit it every couple of weeks. People start to go, right, come on, I'm just trying to get my work done. But this is genuinely stuff that will at some stage start to cause a wee bit of friction in between that.
Mm-hmm. But within that, it's interesting. Another word that you mentioned earlier on there was there's a level of discipline in that. It's there for a reason, and one of the things you said earlier was you got your discipline back.
Yeah,
do you know? Yes. And I think tell us a little bit about discipline.
Oh, I don't know if I'm the person to speak about that.
No, but you've done a good job. You've got a good focus, and you've got that discipline.
It is actually massive for us in our business as well, because when we've been growing, we are getting more siloed, i.e. more where we now have different departments that will handle different things. But in the beginning, you're just doing a bit of everything. So what we were always trying to grain into everybody's head was discipline. You must come in the morning and plan. So we use Microsoft to do religiously. We're moving it all over to Planner. But it was that discipline of saying, right, first hour of the day, you're planning. Then go and break it up, have a coffee, have a whatever else, then get your head into whatever you're going to be doing next. Is it quoting? Is it placing orders? Is it whatever that might be? And having that discipline to go, distractions are off, phones are off, whatever it might be, so you can get in and you can get the best possible hour or two out of that. And I think we're still on that journey with the team and the work, because we want to, if I really had my way, I would say, right, phones are just banned. We'll block all the other websites on the internet, not to create that same environment that I hated back when I worked in the call centre, but because I feel like we all want to get home as soon as possible. We all want to live the best life that we can outside the work. So why are you sat and work on your phone? And that'll be unpopular, right? And I will never roll it out with the guys that are not allowed to be on the phone. But I've recently went down to a 4-day week. I tried to do it when we had my first wee girl, and says, right, one of the benefits of having a business is supposed to be that you can, have the benefits of having a business, so you can work a 4-day week. I didn't do it when my wee girl came, so racked with all this guilt. And then we had our second, and I went, I'm going down to a 4-day week, and I will do a 4-day week regardless. But in order to do that, I was going to have to get so much more efficient. And it probably sometimes come across like rude in the work, but like I have 10 minutes a day where I do small talk, and then it's like, right, that's it, into that, and you kind of need it. But I don't know if everybody wants that environment, but I need that discipline around me to say, right, I'm going at it. This is the times where I'm at it. Phones away, we're working away like that. And that can bleed into other elements, having the discipline to then look after yourself, which I think is the most important part of anybody's day, really, is making sure that you're looking after yourself, sharpening the tools you have, especially if you're in an office, you know, because you're not getting that exercise, you're not getting that movement. So you need to find something you're going to do to make sure that you can be at your best as well, in my opinion.
So what are those things that you do from a personal point of view?
From a personal point of view, it was great because it's good timing. Last Friday, we took half the business out and we went up a Monroe, came back down, done some breath work, and then went into the cold water. And that's the Monroe, not so much, but like the breath work, cold water, do a lot of meditation, a lot of try to do a bit of strength because I'm, as you can see, not built like much. But I do a lot of running and stuff as well. But just trying to, I spoke about it with Jamie Taylor on his podcast about, but just trying to bring your best self to the table. I do believe that, like, if there's a problem within Spring Solutions, I'm going to be one of the best people that can solve that problem by the very nature of the fact that I've been involved in the business for so long. But generally, the biggest blocker to me being able to solve that problem is usually me. So, like, I've not slept well enough, or I'm, a wee bit grumpy, carrying over whatever it might be, a poor sleep, a poor diet. So if I can start to control those things and bring my best self to the table, my chances of overcoming that challenge are increased infinitely.
Very nice.
Yeah. So where are you taking the business? What's next? What's the goal?
So we're in this massive growth period at this time. And it's if I'm honest, it's came out of nowhere. Like, we knew last year we won a massive contract and we had to implement that in the first half of this year. But it seems like the last 3 or 4 months, other companies within the industry have either started looking at what we're putting out there, which I doubt because we're not throwing it in their face quite as much, but they've probably just started to accept that all the problems that we help these companies overcome, that our competitors are still giving them and not overcoming for them, just shouldn't be the norm. So we are inundated, I would say, to the point of being oversubscribed at the moment with inquiries and with opportunities to go and solve these problems for people, which is phenomenal. The big challenge we're going to have is to be starting to tell people, well, actually, it's going to be 6 months before we can get to that, which, as you guys know, if you started a business, it's just a difficult thing to do. But we're in this real period where we've got 3 or 4 major projects going on at the moment that have been quite short-term turnaround. And we're probably increasing from that small to that medium-sized business and the challenges that come with that. So there's a lot of soul searching at the minute to say, right, where do we need people? Where are we going to put people? Do we need more senior people up there? Are we still the best people to take this forward? So we're in an extreme growth phase at the moment. So the next year we'll be implementing these 3 or 4 contracts, steady that out. We've had 3 new team members join us this month. We'll have another 2 hopefully within January or February time. So I would like to say more of the same, but somehow in a more controlled manner, if possible.
Well, that's it. When the work's coming in, you're like, you don't want to be turning it away. Eh?
You like, just can't. And that is genuinely going to be, if we got a phone call today to say, right, we need a chemical management solution, and we did actually get one on Wednesday to say we want you to start before the end of the year. You kind of just say no straight away because they're phoning around companies and want to hear yes. I have to obviously talk about the complexities and how we do it. But if we get a phone call today, the reality is we've probably got about a year's backlog before we're going to start a project right now. But actually saying that to someone when I remember day one when I couldn't pay the wages, day one when you're like going, where's our next order coming from? And so my whole body's fighting against that, telling someone it might be a year before we can get to the work. But the reality is, number one, the most important thing to me, now that we're established and now that we're doing well for ourselves, is creating an amazing culture where we can all thrive, but where it's not at the expense of mental health. It's not at the expense of 15-hour shifts and us all aging or anybody ending up with a haircut like me. So trying to manage that element of it's a big challenge for us right now. But we'll do it. We've managed bigger challenges.
You've got a really nice position with the customers because you got a solution there that they all need. And I guess as well, thinking about back to your dad's business as well, there'll be other people saying, actually, do you know what, we could do with that experience in-house, right?
Yes.
One day.
Yes, definitely. definitely.
So
We see it a lot at meetings where we've had a week this week where everything's just landed. This will be a record week for intake.
Right.
We've had 3 or 4 major opportunities land this week as well. Right. But we regularly say during these periods, like, there's nobody in the industry cannot be doing what we're doing, and we have yet to go in. Often when you get a big opportunity, they will tell you how well everything's been done, because they don't want you to come in and tell you how high the price is going to be. If everybody comes and tells you how badly it's managed, the perception would be that we're going to go in with a higher price, which isn't necessarily the case. But they'll tell you how well it's been run until they see how well it can be done. And I don't think there's anyone touching even 50% of the good work that we do when we can get insight and get embed in it. So I believe that I could sell our proposition or our solutions to anybody within the industry, and we could save them, not only money, but time, energy, hairlines.
And that's the important bit. Well done, mate. Well done.
We ask all our guests, what is your guiding principle in business?
I think looking after yourself is a good one, but it's less of a business one. So if we moved away from that, which we've already talked about, I would say do the best you can do and be the best you can be in every situation. And if you think about that in its most basic format that everybody can relate to, something simple like a household chore, like doing the dishwasher, right? You could do the dishwasher. If we all have to do that tonight and we've all got 10 minutes to do it, you can choose who you're going to be when you do that dishwasher, right? You can go in and you can bump and you can moan and you can throw the plates about and you're going to have a bit of a crap time of it. You're not going to enjoy it. Your wife's probably going to be a bit raging with you that you've done a crap job of it. But you're going to have to spend that 10 minutes anyway. So why not just make that 10 minutes the best 10 minutes that it can possibly be when you're having to fill the dishwasher? Just take your best self to it. Go and enjoy it as much as you possibly can. You'll get a wee bit of enjoyment back out of it, but just put the best that you can into it, and you can know at the end of the day, you can put your stamp on that day and say, I've done the best I can do. And that goes right across the business as well. We all have to do jobs that we're not going to be particularly great or particularly fond of. And doing it every day to the best of the ability is tough. But if you can try and take that into those more menial tasks, I think you'll have a much more enjoyable day. But importantly, your output's going to be a lot better as well.
Yeah. Jonathan, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story, and we wish you all the luck in the future.
Thanks so much, gentlemen. Really appreciate your time.